Rain fell like shattered glass that night, sharp and endless, soaking everything in a cold, merciless gray. The city slept restlessly under flickering streetlights, the kind that buzzed and hummed like broken thoughts. On the old Maplewood Bridge, a young girl stood at the edge, her pale fingers clutching the rusted rail, her hair plastered to her tear-streaked face. Below, the river churned black and angry, ready to swallow another lost soul. Daniel Hayes didn't belong there either. Not at midnight, not after the day he'd had. He was supposed to be home, trying to figure out how to make tomorrow's rent and how to explain to his 6-year-old daughter, Lily, why dinner had been just a slice of toast again. But the car had broken down 3 blocks back, and with his phone dead and the rain cutting like knives, he'd chosen the bridge as a shortcut home. He was tired in the way only someone who's been fighting invisible battles can be. He almost didn't see her. Just a faint silhouette in the storm, a ghostly figure outlined by lightning. He would have walked past if not for the sound, a soft sob that pierced through the roar of the rain. Instinct made him stop. "Hey," he called, his voice hesitant. The girl flinched but didn't turn around. She was young, maybe 19 or 20, wearing a white sweater that clung to her trembling body. "Hey, are you okay?" He tried again, stepping closer, his boots slapping against the wet concrete. "Don't come closer," she cried suddenly, her voice cracking like brittle glass. "Please, just don't." Daniel froze. Something in her tone, raw, desperate, hit him deep in the gut. He knew that sound. He'd heard it once in his own voice, on the night his wife left, leaving him with a crying baby and an empty bank account. He raised his hand slowly, as if trying not to scare a frightened animal. "All right," he said softly. "I won't, but listen to me." "You don't have to do this." She shook her head violently, shoulders heaving. "You don't know me. You don't know what I've done." "No," he said quietly, taking a cautious step closer. "But I know what pain looks like." The wind howled through the bridge, rattling loose bolts. The girl glanced down at the river, eyes hollow, as if searching for peace in the darkness below. Lightning flashed again, illuminating her face, and Daniel saw the mascara-streaked cheeks, the trembling lip, the way her shoes balanced perilously on the edge. "Please," he whispered, heart pounding. "Whatever it is, it's not worth your life." She laughed bitterly, a sound far too broken for someone her age. "Worth it? There's nothing left worth anything." Daniel's mind raced. He couldn't let her fall. Not when he'd seen that same hopelessness in his bathroom mirror too many times. "Look," he said, voice trembling now, "I've lost things too. My wife, my job, almost my home. But I've got a little girl who keeps me going. You don't have to do this. Come down, talk to me." "I can't," she murmured. "It's too late." Her foot shifted forward, and in that instant Daniel lunged. His hand shot out, gripping her arm just as she slipped. Her scream tore through the storm as her body tilted over the railing. His feet skidded, but he held on with everything he had, rain blinding his eyes. "Hold on," he shouted. "Don't let go." "I can't," she sobbed, dangling above the raging river. "Yes, you can." Daniel grunted, muscles straining. With one desperate pull, he dragged her back over the rail, both of them collapsing onto the cold, wet pavement. She trembled violently in his arms, gasping, crying, clutching at his soaked jacket as if afraid to breathe. For a long moment, they just sat there, 2 strangers, broken and breathless under the storm. Daniel brushed the hair from her face and whispered, "You're safe now. You're safe." But when she finally looked up at him, her eyes wide, searching his face, something flickered there. Recognition. Shock. Maybe even fear. "You're Daniel Hayes," she stammered, voice trembling. He blinked, confused. "Yeah, how do you know my name?" The rain fell harder, drowning the silence that followed. Her lips quivered as she whispered, "Because you saved the wrong girl." And just like that, the night went colder. The rain didn't let up that night. It only grew heavier, as if the sky itself was weeping for both of them. Daniel's heartbeat was still erratic, the adrenaline still pounding in his ears. He had just pulled a stranger from death, but now her words echoed louder than the thunder. "You saved the wrong girl." He looked at her closely. Her lips were pale, her eyes red and hollow, but there was something else, a shadow behind her gaze. Something she was running from. "What do you mean?" he asked quietly, brushing water from his face. The girl hesitated, looking away toward the dark river. "You shouldn't have stopped me," she said in a low, trembling voice. "You don't understand. I didn't want to be saved." Daniel's chest tightened. "No one wants to die," he said firmly. "They just want the pain to stop." Her eyes filled with tears again. "You think I don't know that?" she whispered. "But some pain doesn't stop. It just grows. And it takes everything you love with it." The way she said it, shaking, hollow, made him stop pressing. Instead, he shrugged off his worn jacket and draped it over her shoulders. "You'll freeze," he murmured. "Let's get out of the rain. There's a small diner a few blocks down." She didn't protest. Maybe she didn't have the strength to. As they walked together, Daniel noticed the way she kept her arms wrapped tightly around herself, as if afraid she might fall apart at any second. She was young, barely more than a kid, but her eyes looked like they'd seen too much. Inside the diner, the fluorescent lights hummed softly. The waitress glanced up, startled by their drenched state, but said nothing. Daniel guided the girl to a corner booth, away from curious eyes. Steam rose from their coffee cups, fogging the glass between them. "So," Daniel began gently, "are you going to tell me your name?" She hesitated before answering, her fingers tracing circles on the wet table. "Emily," she said quietly. "Emily Carter," he nodded. "All right, Emily, I'm Daniel." "I know," she said softly, her gaze flicking up for the briefest second. "Everyone knows your name." That confused him. Daniel was just a mechanic, a broke one at that. There was nothing about him that could possibly make him known. "What's that supposed to mean?" he asked, his tone careful but uneasy. Emily bit her lip, eyes darting away. "I've seen your face before." "In a photo." He leaned forward slightly. "Where?" Her voice dropped to a whisper. "In my mother's things." That stopped him cold. "Your mother's?" Emily nodded, her fingers trembling around the coffee mug. "She used to talk about you sometimes. Years ago. Said you were a good man once. Said you saved her life too." Daniel blinked in disbelief, trying to place the memory. "What was her name?" "Anna," Emily said. "Anna Carter." The sound of that name hit him like a blow. The world around him seemed to fade for a moment, replaced by flashes of a woman's face, soft laughter, the smell of rain, a night long ago when he'd helped a stranger change a tire on this very bridge. He hadn't thought of her in years. "Anna," he whispered. She's your mother?" Emily nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "Was. She died 3 months ago." The diner felt suddenly too quiet. Daniel swallowed hard, unsure what to say. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "She was kind. I only met her once, but I remember." Emily gave a broken smile. "Yeah. She said you were the only person who ever stopped to help her that night. But after she died," her voice cracked. "Everything fell apart. I lost our apartment, dropped out of school. And then..." Her sentence trailed off into silence. Daniel didn't push. The pain in her voice told him enough. He looked down at his hands, calloused, oil-stained, tired. He hadn't planned to be anyone's hero tonight. He barely had enough strength left to be a father. But sitting across from this broken girl, something in him shifted. Maybe fate had led him to that bridge for a reason. "You've been through hell, Emily," he said softly. "But you're still here. That means something." She shook her head. "I don't think it does. I've made mistakes, Daniel. Big ones. Ones that can't be fixed." He leaned forward, meeting her eyes. "Then let me help you fix them." Her gaze wavered, uncertain, almost afraid of hope. "Why would you help me?" "You don't even know me," Daniel smiled sadly. "Because someone once helped me when I didn't deserve it. Maybe it's my turn to do the same." For the first time, she didn't look away. Something fragile flickered in her eyes. Maybe trust, maybe longing. But just as quickly, it was gone. She looked toward the window, where raindrops streaked the glass like falling stars, and whispered, "If you knew what I'd done, Daniel, you wouldn't be sitting here." He frowned. "What did you do, Emily?" Her eyes filled again, her fingers trembling around the cup. She looked up, lips quivering. "I ruined someone's life," she said. "And I think it was yours." The air inside the diner turned heavy, thick with the kind of silence that crushes sound. Daniel's hand froze halfway to his coffee. "I ruined someone's life? And I think it was yours." The words replayed in his mind, slow and jagged, like shards of glass grinding against each other. He stared at her, this fragile, trembling girl with rain-damp hair and guilt carved into every breath she took. "What are you talking about?" he asked quietly, though his chest had already started to tighten. Emily couldn't look at him. Her hand shook as she clutched the coffee mug like it was her last defense against the truth. "You have a daughter," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "Lily, right?" Daniel's entire body went still. How did she know Lily's name? "Yes," he said slowly. "She's 6. Why?" Emily's eyes filled again. Because what happened to you two. It was my fault." Daniel felt the world tilt slightly. He leaned back, his mind flashing through memories of the last year, losing his job at the repair shop, the eviction notice, the humiliation of begging for extra hours at the gas station. "You're not making any sense," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. She took a shaky breath. "I was working as an assistant for a finance firm downtown," she began. "It was supposed to be temporary, just something to help me and my mom. One night I was doing data entry when I found something strange. Documents about unpaid wages and false reports. I thought I could fix it. I thought I could expose it." Her voice cracked. "So I sent copies of those files to a journalist. But I didn't know the names attached. Didn't know one of the accounts belonged to you." Daniel blinked, confused. "Accounts?" "I don't have any—" "You did," she interrupted softly. "Through your old job. Your boss was using employee insurance records to launder money. You were one of the fake names on the reports. I exposed it without realizing it would cost innocent people their jobs. The shop shut down. Everyone was investigated. You got blacklisted, didn't you?" Daniel's stomach twisted. He remembered that week vividly. The chaos, the layoffs, the angry co-workers, and how he'd stood outside the office, begging for a chance to prove he wasn't part of it. He'd lost everything overnight. He stared at her, stunned. "That was you?" Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I didn't mean to destroy your life, Daniel. I was trying to do the right thing, but my mistake hurt you and your daughter, and I couldn't live with that." Daniel sat back, silent, the weight of her confession pressing down like wet cement. He wanted to be angry, to shout, to demand why she hadn't been more careful. But all he could see was a broken girl trembling before him, drowning in remorse. He rubbed his face, exhaling shakily. "You were just a kid," he said finally. "You didn't know, but I should have known." She snapped, the pain spilling over. "You lost your job because of me. Your little girl went hungry because I tried to play hero." Her words hit hard, because they were true. There had been nights he'd sat in the dark, counting coins, wondering how to tell Lily they'd have to move again. Nights when anger had clawed at his insides, searching for someone to blame. And now, here she was. He looked at her again. Really looked. The exhaustion, the guilt, the hollow beneath her eyes. She wasn't evil. Just lost. Just human. "Emily," he said quietly, "if you wanted to make things right, jumping off that bridge wouldn't have done it." Her lips quivered. "I know, but I didn't know how else to atone. I thought if I disappeared, maybe it would even the balance." Daniel shook his head slowly. "That's not how redemption works." Her eyes lifted to his, desperate. "Then tell me how." "Tell me how to fix what I've broken." For a moment, he didn't know the answer. He was still a man trying to fix his own life, still barely holding on. But something inside him, something that hadn't felt alive in months, whispered that maybe this moment was the beginning of fixing it. Not through anger, but through forgiveness. He reached across the table, his rough hand covering hers. "You can't change the past," he said softly. "But you can decide what kind of person you'll be from now on. If you really want to make things right, start there." Her shoulders shook, her tears falling onto his hand. "You should hate me." "I did," Daniel admitted. "But not anymore." The words hung between them, fragile and heavy with meaning. Outside, the storm began to quiet, the steady rhythm of rain softening to a whisper. For the first time, Emily breathed without trembling. "Maybe," she said quietly. "Maybe I was meant to meet you again." Daniel gave a faint smile. "Or maybe we were both meant to be on that bridge tonight." But as they sat there, sharing the silence, a shadow moved outside the diner window. A man in a dark coat watching them. His eyes lingered on Emily with something close to recognition before he turned and disappeared into the rain. Emily's face went pale. "Oh no," she whispered, voice trembling. "They found me." The clinking of dishes and the low hum of the diner faded into a dull murmur as Emily's trembling words hung in the air. "They found me." Her eyes darted toward the fogged window, scanning the street beyond the glass. The storm outside had quieted, but something colder now filled the air, a pulse of fear. Daniel followed her gaze, but the man was already gone. Just the faint shimmer of wet pavement remained, glowing under the flickering streetlight. "Who was that?" he asked, voice low, careful. Emily swallowed hard, her breathing uneven. "He works for them," she said, barely above a whisper. "Them?" "The firm I exposed," she explained, hands twisting together in her lap. "The one that was laundering money through fake insurance accounts. After I leaked those documents, the higher-ups lost millions, and they've been trying to find me ever since. I didn't just ruin careers, Daniel. I uncovered a criminal operation." Daniel's chest tightened. "And now they want revenge," she nodded shakily. "They made it look like an internal leak. People got fired, questioned. I went into hiding, changed my number, moved every few weeks. But then my mom got sick. I had to come back for her. After she died, I had nothing left to lose." Her voice broke. "That's why I went to that bridge tonight." Daniel stared at her, trying to absorb everything. The guilt, the fear, the exhaustion carved deep into her young face. He ran a hand through his damp hair, exhaling hard. "All right," he said. "First things first, you're not going back out there alone. If they're really after you, you need somewhere safe." She looked at him, startled. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying you can stay at my place for the night. It's not much, just a small apartment, but at least no one will find you there." Emily hesitated. "I can't do that." "I've already caused enough damage to your life." Daniel's expression softened. "You think I'd let you walk back into the dark after what I saw tonight?" He stood, tossing a few bills on the table. "Come on." They left the diner together, stepping into the rain-washed streets. The air smelled like metal and wet asphalt, the storm now just a memory. The city lights reflected on puddles, broken into colors by each ripple. Daniel walked slightly ahead, his protective instincts kicking in like second nature. When they reached his building, a worn-out complex tucked behind an auto garage, Emily paused, shivering. "This is where you live?" He smiled faintly. "For now, till I can find something better for Lily." Inside, the apartment was small but warm. The walls were faded, the furniture mismatched, but it felt alive, like a place where love refused to die even when money ran out. A few crayon drawings were taped to the fridge. Daddy and me, our little family, and a shaky heart with the name Lily scribbled inside. Emily's eyes softened as she looked around. "She's beautiful," she whispered, noticing a photo of a little girl with curly hair and bright eyes. "She's my reason for everything," Daniel said quietly. "Even when things fall apart, she keeps me going." Emily smiled sadly. "You must be a good dad," Daniel chuckled dryly. "I try. Some days, that's all you can do." She sat on the couch while he fetched a towel and an old sweater from his closet. "Here," he said, handing them over. "They're not fancy, but they're dry." "Thank you," she murmured. "For everything." "You didn't have to do any of this," Daniel shrugged, leaning against the doorway. "Maybe not. But sometimes the people who least deserve help need it the most." For a while, silence filled the room, broken only by the ticking of an old clock. Emily stared at the rain-streaked window, her reflection ghostly in the glass. "You ever wonder," she said softly, "why life brings the wrong people together at the right time?" Daniel thought about it. Maybe because those are the only moments we find out who we really are. Their eyes met, two souls bound by a single, life-changing night. But peace didn't last long. A sudden knock at the door shattered the quiet. 3 firm raps, then another. Daniel's eyes narrowed. It was almost midnight. No one ever came this late. Emily froze. "Don't answer it," she whispered, panic flashing in her voice. The knocking came again, harder this time. "Daniel Hayes?" A man's voice called from outside. Deep, controlled, too calm to be a stranger. Daniel stepped closer to the door. "Who's asking?" "Detective Monroe," the voice replied. "We need to talk about the girl you pulled from the bridge." Emily's face went white. She shook her head violently. No, he's not a detective." "That's him, Daniel." "The man in the raincoat." Daniel's pulse spiked. He looked at the door, then back at her terrified eyes. The handle began to turn from the other side. He whispered, "Get behind me." The doorknob twisted slowly, the sound slicing through the quiet apartment like a blade. Daniel's muscles tensed. He stepped in front of Emily, shielding her instinctively as the handle rattled again. Whoever was outside wasn't waiting for permission to enter. "Stay behind me," he whispered again, his voice steady but low, eyes never leaving the door. Emily nodded, trembling, clutching the towel around her shoulders like a shield. Then came a second voice from the hall, soft, cautious. "Dad, are you home?" Daniel froze. Lily. His heart lurched into his throat. He sprinted to the door and yanked it open before thinking twice. There she was, his little girl, standing in the dim hallway in her pink pajamas, holding her worn-out teddy bear, confusion written all over her face. "Daddy, the thunder woke me up," she murmured. "Who's here?" Daniel's relief was instant, but short-lived. Because behind her, half hidden in the shadows of the stairwell, stood the man in the raincoat. He was tall, built like someone who'd been trained to stand still for hours. His hair slicked back from the rain, his jaw sharp, his eyes cold. The moment Daniel met them, he knew this man wasn't a detective. "Evening, Mr. Hayes," the man said smoothly, voice deep and steady. "Quite a night for unexpected company." Daniel's instincts screamed. "Who are you?" he demanded, stepping protectively between the man and his daughter. The stranger smiled faintly. "Let's just say I'm here to collect someone who doesn't belong here." His gaze shifted to Emily, who now stood frozen by the couch, her face pale as paper. "Emily," he said, his tone almost casual, "you've caused a lot of trouble." "It's time to come with me." She shook her head violently. "No! You don't understand. If I go with you, I'm dead." The man's expression didn't change. "You should have thought about that before you opened your mouth." Daniel's pulse pounded. He glanced down at Lily, who clutched his leg, frightened. "Go to your room, sweetheart," he said quietly. "Lock the door and don't come out no matter what." "But Daddy," now Lily. Her eyes welled up, but she obeyed, running down the hallway with small, hurried steps. The sound of the bedroom door locking gave Daniel just enough calm to face the storm brewing in his living room. He turned back to the man. "You've got a lot of nerve showing up here," he said. "I'm not here for you, Mr. Hayes," the man replied coldly. "I'm here for her. Hand her over, and this ends quietly." Daniel felt the weight of those words like a punch to the gut. He looked at Emily, her hands shaking, tears pooling in her eyes, and then back at the stranger. "You think I'm just going to let you walk out of here with her?" The man sighed, his tone almost pitying. "You don't know what you're involving yourself in. She's not innocent, and the people she crossed don't forgive mistakes. If you care about your daughter, you'll step aside." Daniel's jaw clenched. He'd heard enough threats in his life to recognize a real one. But this time something inside him wouldn't back down. "I've already lost too much," he said quietly. "You're not taking her." The man tilted his head slightly, studying him. "You'd risk your life for a girl you just met?" Daniel's eyes burned with resolve. "You don't turn your back on someone standing on a ledge." "Not then, not ever." A moment of tense silence hung in the air, thick, dangerous. Then the man's expression hardened. "Wrong answer." He reached into his coat. Before Daniel could think, he lunged forward, slamming the door against the man's arm. A metallic object clattered to the ground, something small, maybe a taser. The stranger cursed, shoving back hard, but Daniel held his ground, every ounce of strength fueled by adrenaline and fatherly instinct. "Run, Emily!" Daniel shouted. She didn't hesitate this time. She grabbed her bag and bolted through the kitchen, slipping out the back door into the narrow alleyway. The man roared, slamming Daniel against the wall. But Daniel shoved back, using every ounce of fight left in him. The sound of footsteps echoed down the hallway, the man chasing after her. Daniel stumbled forward, gasping, his knuckles raw from the struggle. He sprinted to the window, catching a glimpse of Emily running through the rain-soaked alley, her silhouette small but defiant under the flickering streetlights. The man was close behind. Without thinking, Daniel grabbed his jacket and tore out after them. The night exploded into chaos, footsteps splashing through puddles, echoes bouncing off brick walls, the hum of the city swallowed by rain. "Emily," he shouted. "Keep running!" But before she could respond, a black car screeched around the corner, its headlights blinding, cutting through the dark like knives. The door opened. Two more men stepped out. Emily froze. Daniel's heart stopped. He was still half a block away when he saw the man in the raincoat grab her by the arm and shove her toward the car. She screamed his name once, desperate, pleading, but the sound was swallowed by the storm. The car door slammed. Tires screeched, and in seconds, They were gone. Daniel stood in the middle of the street, rain pouring down his face, his fists clenched, breath ragged. He had saved her once, dragged her back from the edge of a bridge, but now she was gone again. Taken. Lightning flashed above him, and he whispered into the storm, "I'm not losing her again." The storm had quieted, but Daniel's heart hadn't. It beat like a drum against his ribs as he stood in the middle of the deserted street, soaked to the bone, his breath misting in the cold night air. The black car's taillights had already vanished into the distance, leaving only tire tracks glistening on wet asphalt, a cruel reminder that she was gone. Again, he wanted to collapse, to scream into the night, but then he thought of Lily, safe in her room, waiting for her father to come back through that door, and Emily, terrified, trapped and alone in the hands of people who wanted her silenced. The image of her pleading eyes on the bridge flashed before him. He'd promised himself he wouldn't let anyone fall if he could help it. Not again. Not this time. Daniel pulled his phone from his pocket, but it was dead, drenched from the rain and the struggle. He glanced toward the faint glow of the auto garage down the street, its open 24 hours sign flickering weakly. Without thinking, he ran. Inside, the garage was empty except for the hum of a space heater and the faint smell of gasoline. Mike, the night mechanic and Daniel's old co-worker, looked up from under the hood of a car. "Dan, Jesus, man, what happened to you?" "No time," Daniel said breathlessly. "I need your help," Mike frowned. "It's past midnight. I don't care." Daniel grabbed a shop rag and wiped his hands, trying to think. "I need to track a black sedan. License plate starts with 7DR. They just took someone." "Please, Mike." Mike studied him for a long moment, saw the desperation in his friend's eyes, and nodded. "All right. The city has cameras all over. I can check the traffic feeds. Give me a sec." While Mike booted up the system, Daniel paced the floor, his fists clenching and unclenching. Every minute that passed felt like an eternity. His mind raced back to Emily's words. "You saved the wrong girl." But now it didn't feel that way. Saving her had brought him back to life, given him a purpose beyond survival. "She's not just some runaway, is she?" Mike asked finally, his eyes flicking to the monitor. Daniel shook his head. "No, she exposed something big. Now they want her dead." Mike whistled under his breath. "Man, you know how to pick trouble." "I didn't pick it," Daniel said. "It found me." After a few tense minutes, Mike's eyes widened. "There, that's them." Daniel rushed over. The grainy footage showed the black car turning off Maple Avenue and heading toward the docks. The timestamp was barely 5 minutes old. "The docks?" Daniel muttered. "Why there?" Mike shrugged. "Quiet. No witnesses." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Then that's where I'm going." Mike grabbed his arm. "Dan, don't be stupid. These people aren't playing around. Call the cops." "I don't have time," Daniel said, pulling free. "By the time the cops show up, she'll be gone." Mike stared at him, then tossed him a set of keys. "Take the tow truck." "It's got a full tank." Daniel nodded, already halfway to the door. "If I'm not back in an hour, call 911. The rain had started again as he drove. Steady, relentless. The city blurred past in streaks of silver and shadow. Every turn, every flash of light seemed to whisper her name. Emily. When he reached the docks, the night was eerily still. The air smelled of salt, oil, and rust. The distant creak of cranes echoed across the water. He killed the engine, stepped out quietly, and scanned the row of warehouses. A single light glowed faintly through the broken window of one. He moved toward it, his footsteps silent on the slick ground. Inside, voices murmured, low, controlled, dangerous. "She should have kept quiet," one man said. "Boss says get rid of her by sunrise." Daniel's blood ran cold. He crept closer, peering through the crack in the rusted door. Emily sat on a chair in the center of the room, her wrists tied, a bruise forming on her cheek. The man in the raincoat stood before her, calm and unhurried. "You should have stayed hidden," he said. "Now you've made things worse, for everyone." Emily lifted her head weakly. "You think killing me will fix it?" "The truth's already out there," he smirked. "We'll handle the truth." "We always do." Daniel didn't think. He moved. Grabbing a metal pipe from the ground, he pushed the door open with a bang. "Hey!" he shouted. 3 heads snapped toward him. The man in the raincoat's eyes widened in recognition before narrowing into something cold. "You again," he said. "You just don't know when to quit." "Let her go," Daniel said, voice steady even as his hands trembled with fury. The man sighed. "You're making a mistake." "No." Daniel replied. The mistake was thinking I'd walk away. The first thug lunged, but Daniel swung the pipe hard, catching him in the ribs. Another came at him from the side. Daniel blocked the punch, slammed the man against a crate, and drove his elbow into his gut. Pain shot through his arm, but adrenaline kept him upright. "Run, Emily!" he shouted. She struggled against the ropes, finally breaking free with a sharp edge of metal from the floor. The man in the raincoat reached for his weapon, but Daniel tackled him, sending them both crashing into a stack of boxes. The two fought brutally, fists, knees, desperate grunts echoing off the walls. The man's strength was relentless, trained. But Daniel fought with something stronger than skill. He fought with purpose. With a father's heart, a final swing sent the man sprawling. Daniel stumbled to his feet, gasping, bruised but alive. He grabbed Emily's hand. "Come on!" They ran through the rain-slicked docks, lungs burning, feet splashing through puddles. Behind them, the sound of sirens began to wail in the distance. Mike had kept his promise. They didn't stop until they reached the edge of the pier, where the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, painting the water gold. Emily collapsed to her knees, sobbing, trembling. You came for me," she whispered. Daniel knelt beside her, pulling her into a trembling embrace. "I told you I wouldn't lose you again." For a long moment, neither spoke. Just the sound of the waves, the sirens drawing nearer, and the rain easing into a mist. Emily looked up at him, tears glistening in her eyes. "Why? Why would you risk your life for me after everything I did?" Daniel smiled weakly. "Because no one ever came for me when I fell. Maybe that's how the world starts to heal, one person at a time." But as the first police lights flickered across the pier, Emily's face turned pale again. "Daniel, there's something else you don't know." He frowned. "What?" She hesitated, her voice breaking. "Anna, my mom, she didn't just know you. You weren't just the man who helped her once. You were the reason she left home that night." Daniel's breath caught. "What are you saying?" Emily met his eyes, trembling. "She wasn't a stranger to you, Daniel. She was someone you once loved." For a long, heavy moment, the world around them seemed to stop. The rain had softened into a whisper, the sirens in the distance fading as the police neared the docks. But all Daniel could hear was the echo of her words. "She wasn't a stranger to you, Daniel. She was someone you once loved." His heartbeat stuttered. The sound of waves against the pier grew louder, crashing in rhythm with the pounding inside his chest. Emily's face blurred behind the fog of disbelief and old pain. He swallowed hard. What do you mean?" Emily looked down, her soaked hair clinging to her cheeks. "My mother's name was Anna Monroe. Before she met my father, she used to work at the same outreach shelter you volunteered at 15 years ago. You helped her when she was trying to get clean." Daniel's knees gave out slightly. The air left his lungs. "Anna?" The name alone sent him spiraling back, flickers of a forgotten time playing behind his eyes. A young woman with trembling hands, a shy smile, and eyes that shimmered with both hope and fear. The one person who'd thanked him with tears in her voice when he'd said, "Everyone deserves a second chance." He remembered how she used to hum quietly while painting, how her laughter had echoed in the kitchen of that tiny shelter apartment, how one night she'd vanished, leaving nothing but a note. "Thank you for believing in me. Maybe one day I'll be worth that belief." His voice broke. "Anna, she was your mother?" Emily nodded, her eyes glistening. "She told me about you once. Said there was a man who saved her spirit before she ever saved her life. Said he was the only one who saw the good in her when no one else did. She wanted to come back and thank you, but then..." Her voice trembled. "Then she died." Daniel closed his eyes, grief washing over him like a fresh storm. "I looked for her," he whispered. "Years ago. After she left the shelter, I asked around. No one knew where she'd gone." Emily hesitated. "She knew. She saw your name in an article. A mechanic who saved a child from a fire. She said she wasn't surprised, that you'd always been a man who ran toward danger, not away from it." Daniel's chest tightened painfully. For so long he'd believed the world had taken everything from him. His family, his purpose, his hope. But here, standing before him, was proof that maybe it hadn't taken everything. Maybe it had left him one final piece of her, Emily. The faint glow of dawn stretched over the harbor, golden light reflecting off the wet boards beneath them. The police were approaching now, shouts, flashlights cutting through the mist. But neither of them moved. "I should have protected her," Daniel said quietly. "If I'd been there..." Emily cut him off, shaking her head. You did, in ways you'll never understand. She told me your words kept her alive longer than anyone else's ever could. You gave her strength when the world gave her nothing. And that's why I came to find you. Daniel blinked, confused. Find me? Yes, she said softly. I wasn't just running from them. I was looking for you. The night I left my apartment, I found her old letter, one she'd written but never sent. It had your name and the shelter's address. I thought if anyone could help me start over, it'd be the man she called her Miracle. He stared at her, the truth sinking in like light through fog. Everything, the encounter on the bridge, the fear in her eyes, the way she'd looked at him with a strange familiarity, it all made sense now. The officers finally reached them. Weapons lowered after seeing the two figures slumped on the pier. Daniel raised his hands instinctively. She's the victim, he said hoarsely. They took her. I got her out. Emily gripped his sleeve tightly, as if afraid he'd vanish the moment she let go. One of the officers, a young woman with sharp eyes, recognized him. You're the one from the bridge, she said. We've been looking for you both. The department got the footage. You saved her life. Daniel said nothing, just nodded as the paramedics checked Emily for injuries. Daniel stood a few steps away, watching the sunrise cut through the mist. It painted the water in gold and rose, the same colors that had once spilled across the shelter's window when Anna used to hum her morning songs. Emily limped toward him, wrapped in a blanket. They want to take me in for questioning, she said softly. But after that, I don't know where to go. Daniel looked at her for a long moment. Then he smiled faintly, the kind of smile that carried both grief and grace. You don't have to figure that out alone. Her eyes widened slightly. You mean? I mean, you've got a home, he said. If you want it. Tears welled in her eyes. She took a step forward, then another, until she collapsed into his arms. He held her tightly, as if protecting something fragile and irreplaceable, not just Anna's memory, but the future that might still be saved. Behind them, the city began to wake. The distant hum of traffic, the cry of seagulls circling above the water. Emily whispered into his chest. You said everyone deserves a second chance. Does that include yourself? Daniel smiled faintly, resting his chin on her hair. I think that's the only way it works. As the light fully broke across the pier, Daniel looked toward the horizon, his reflection shimmering beside hers in the rippling water. Two lives, broken and remade by pain, finally converging at the edge of dawn, and for the first time in years, Daniel didn't feel like a man chasing ghosts. He felt like a man coming home. Fade out. Final line. Some miracles don't happen in churches or hospitals. They happen in the quiet moments between two people who refuse to give up on each other.